Hey, welcome back to my car shop. Today we're going to start patching up the front fender for John's 66 Plymouth Belvedere. You're not going to want to miss this. Stick through the episode and we'll get right after it on the other side. Rock.
Working out of a 100-year-old refurbished barn, bringing 35 years of experience to projects considered beyond repair. Vision, creativity, and problem solving are essential tools in this place. Watch as we transform junk into polished metal miracles. This is My Car's Shop.
So if you have seen any of our car hunting episodes, there's two right now. There's one on the 70 Duster that I did end up purchasing. And then there is one on John's 66 Belvedere. It's a car that I've been helping him kind of do some of the body work and stuff. Got his quarter panel on there. This is the front fender that I told him I'd go ahead and do the patch work on for him. So today we're going to work on getting this all patched up. This fender is actually off a 66 Satellite, but it's exactly the same car, same fender body-wise. So we're going to use this fender on there, but it's got some rust holes. So I'll do a walk around with you and show you what we have. And then we're going to just stop talking and get to rocking. So for some reason, when this car was brought into the machine shop, the front fender was basically taken off and thrown out into a scrap pile. And so it's pretty bad. And this fender's the replacement fender for it. So we have a rust hole down here at the bottom, as you can see. Come up around, it's in pretty good shape. A little bit of a bubble there I got to fix. The front bottom of this fender is gone. So the other fender has a good front bottom. So I'm probably going to just snip that off and we'll just meld the two into one here. So that'll be good. Then we come up and around. There are holes in the top of the fender here where the Satellite trim is different, as you can see. So we're going to have to fill those. And then we've got a small patch that we need to do right here. So probably where I'm going to start with this is just get after patching up these holes. Looks like we got a little inner structure patch we got to do there as well. We'll strip this fender down eventually, but for now I just want to get the patch worked on and get the holes welded in, and then we'll see where we go from there. All right, I thought we'd get started with this little spot here because that looks pretty simple, and there's some other surface rust I want to clean up here anyway, so. As is typical, what you see is always about 10 times worse than what it really is. So this inner structure here is pretty good. It's shot right there. So it'll be a fairly simple process to cut a piece to put just weld in here, a little L piece. I'll bend one up on the brake. That won't be a big deal. Being as this is hidden, it doesn't have to, be cosmetically good. But let's flip this fender over now and I'll show you what we have on the other side. Okay, so we actually need to make a piece that comes from here all the way down to about here, and that comes around like this. So an L-shaped piece, this can be a pretty simple fix. So what I'll do is probably going to have to actually make it shaped like an S with double bends. So it'll go, put my finger in here, up, across, and then up. And we've got to blend that in pretty well, because that's fairly visible, so it'll look good. But the piece is probably going to have to be about 8 or 10 inches long. So for a little bitty rust hole that we could see from before, but in here it's all gone because of that double layer. Once I get this piece cut out, it's going to be a fairly simple process to fix this other piece behind, and then we'll put this patch on. So that's the first thing we're going to do right now, is get after that with the cutoff wheel, get that cut out, and see what we got underneath it. Okay, so we've got our pieces cut out. There's a little bit of a pit hole right here, and I think I'm just going to fill weld that. It's so small, and it'll be fine. So, again, in here, I'm just not sure yet where I'm going with this, so got to ponder that a little bit. I'll make this piece extra long. I'm thinking the best choice probably would be to just blend this in with weld and grind it down and make it look fine. So that's probably what I'll do, but I just need to start fabricating and see what we end up with. Okay, so off camera, I just cut up a little cardboard template, and like I said, this is on the inside. I don't really care that it looks perfect. I just want it to be functional to give some strength back to this inner fender brace. So we'll cut up a piece of metal that is similar to that, and we'll get that welded in here in just a moment or six. Okay, so I got my little piece bent up. I didn't bother taking you through that process. I actually had a piece of metal that had this bend on it, so it was very nice to just be able to trim that out of that piece and then bend this on it. So it fits nicely. We'll get it fit in the fender here. A little cleanup to do in there and on here so we can weld, and then we're going to get her melted in place. So let's glue this thing. Okay, so we've got that welded in there now, and I am not bothering to metal finish that. Couldn't care less. It's hidden, you can't see it. I've got it coated with rust reformer, and I was just sitting here thinking that once I got this body work done, I'll do the outside stuff, and I'll have just have John go after the inside of this fender with a wire wheel and have him spray it down with the same stuff. So before it gets painted, it'll be all rust treated and good to go, so it shouldn't rust in the future. So our next trick now is to make this piece here, and yeah, I'm gonna have to butt weld that in there, so that's gonna be a bit of a pain in the butt with a MIG welder, but done it before. Just as a little side note, I've selected the TIG that I want. I'm probably gonna go ahead and get one. My wife has been encouraging me to, but just gonna hold off a little bit longer here yet. Just a little bit uncertain about the economy right now and what's going to happen, so being a little tight with my cash, but being as my business is a little tenuous right now because of everything that's been going on this last year, probably just going to wait a little bit and see. But anyway, the TIG is I'm pretty sure I'll be getting one this year, and quite frankly probably before spring. So okay, so again, I had this fit. So I just want to mark where these lines are so I can find where that fold is. Up there. There. Okay. So we'll get a straight edge, draw that line there, and then we'll make a fold to make sure that fits. Go. Come back over here now. Oh, I forgot to fold it first. So we'll fold it on that line kind of sort of close. I really do prefer using this poster board to regular cardboard because it doesn't have that corrugation in there, and you get much more accurate bending and so forth. Now the next trick we're going to have, of course, is getting this other line in here done. So now that I have that bend line, I'm just going to kind of push this down in here and make a line there. Now I know that that width across there is pretty uniform, so I'm just going to go ahead and take a guess at it, where it's got to be. See, it's got just a slight, no, that's pretty straight. Templates are about eyeballs, right? At least for me they are. They don't have to be perfect initially. You're just trying to get it roughed in, get it eyeballed in. Okay, So I'm going to go ahead and cut this up just up past that. The reason it was having a hard time starting is I had it too deep in the jaws of the scissors. Okay, so then that gives me my little flippy piece should I decide to make it. So I'm going to fold that up. Oh, it's cold out here today. Man, it was 10 degrees this morning when I woke up. That's just ridiculous. Temperature in the shop was 26. That was at the outside wall. Quite sure it was a little warmer than that in here because I have bottled water on the floor over there on the south side of the shop. And it's not frozen. So, yeah, I think this is going to be pretty good. Matter of fact, I think it's going to be very good. And, oops, it's a little bit deep right there. So somehow I didn't bend it properly. So we got to do that line differently, and that's good. That's fine. You know, yeah, actually, you can take this cardboard over in the sheet metal brake, and I've done that. If you want to get a good line, I'm not that worried about it because I intend to kind of peen this in here anyway. Yeah, as a matter of fact, you know what? I'm going about this differently. I am not going to do that bend there. I'm going to fill that with weld, as I said earlier. My original plan was better. So let's just cut this off. There we go. And make this piece so it sits down in there. Pretty good, eh? So, you know, I marked it on the outsides here as you saw, and then I had to transfer that to a guesstimate on the other side. And so I was just putting it in here in place again to make sure that that line does indeed line up, and it does, so we're good to go. All right, now I've got the piece bent up. Now I got to start trimming it back to get it to line up to where the cut is, and it's actually quite long. We're probably looking at half an inch too long. But that's fine, no big deal. Yep, right there. So we'll hit the tin snips and we'll just play snipty snip and get her cut up here. Okay, I just wanted you to see the patch. It's pretty good. I got a little bit of a thing right there. I got to grind that, just the slightest, thinnest hair there. But it's good. It fits well. I'm very happy. And like I said, I think what I'm going to do in here is just fill weld that on the corner and then grind it to the contour. I think that's going to be easy. Oh, sorry, in here. I'm just going to fill weld that and grind it to the contour in there. May not be the most ideal way to do this, but I think it's going to work fine. I got to do a little cutting back in here yet, get some of that rust out of there, but I think that's going to work well. If it doesn't, we'll do a different piece. No big deal. As you can see, it fits better now, so I'm going to go ahead and tack that thing in there. And we'll go from there. I got to do a little grinding and cleanup to make sure everything is going to weld good. And then I've got to be very patient because butt welding with a MIG welder is not fun. All right, we're ready to get after this. I got everything flush. Feels really nice. I'm going to have an issue in here. I'm going to have to be very careful, but I'll get it tacked. One of the big things about butt welding is warpage. You've got to go slow, you've got to take your time, you've got to move out, you've got to take some breaks. But I'm going to go around and get the corners tacked, probably tack up in a couple spots up in here, and then tack here where it's flush, and then I've got to press this in a little bit. Now I can't really hammer and dolly this because I got a piece of metal brace behind it, so it's going to be tedious, but we'll get her done. Sometimes in the past what I've done is take a small strip of metal and tack it to one side or the other on the back side. To give me something to weld against, but I don't really want to do that here where it's got that brace behind there because I can't really get in there well behind that to rust treat that. I do need to pop this back out and shoot this with some high heat paint real quick, and then we'll be good to go. Just a quick comment, while that's drying, I just shot it, I got to shoot it one more time. For those who haven't watched other episodes, this is a me thing. I could be full of crap, but a lot of guys like to use weld through primer. But one thing I know about primers of every kind, except for some of the really strong urethane stuff, is they all over time tend to accumulate moisture. What's that going to do to metal? It's going to cause it to rust. So I'll hit it with high heat paint, that way that paint stays. except for where I weld. Weld is about 3,000 degrees with a MIG welder, and that paint is good for 2,500 degrees, so it's not going to burn back very far at all, and then that material is sealed with paint and shouldn't rust. So right, wrong, or indifferent, that's what I do. You guys do whatever you think is right. I'm not recommending it, I'm just telling you what I do. Alright, so we have the other fender here. This is the one I was mentioning that was thrown out on the scrap pile. We think this car was in an accident and hit on the driver's side. We're sure it was. And we're not sure, but this car was purchased by a guy that owned a machine shop, and he picked up lots of parts. There's a set of fiberglass fenders. If you look at the overview video, I'll put the link for it up here. If you look at the overview video, you'll see a lot of those. There's extra deck lids, extra doors, all kinds of extra stuff for the car. So the guy pulled it into his machine shop in the 80s, and it just has been sitting there ever since, and nothing was done with it. So anyway, for whatever reason, when he got the car, this fender had problems, and he just threw it out on the scrap pile. So it's got some good bits on. There's a lot of Bondo in it, but it's got some good bits in it. And I'm just gonna cut this off here and work on putting that piece here off of this one, which is good, I think. Well, there's a bunch of Bondo in there, but it still gives me something to work with to patch the front of that bottom fender as I showed you in the beginning. So let's get that done. Alright, so we have the piece off, and there is some Bondo up in here, so I'm going to do a little metal shaping on this before we put it on. And I cut it straight across, so literally it's going to just go right underneath that body line and across, and I think I'm just going to go ahead and replace all of this, unless when I get in here this piece is worse than I think. But the Bondo looks to be, 1/16 of an inch thick, so I don't think it's that bad. We'll find out when we get in there. Okay, so we got it all stripped down, and my question would be, there's not a dent in this thing, a little teeny one right there. As is so common, I see on cars, is people put mud on where they just don't need it. I see no reason why there was mud on here other than this little teeny dent, and it's just senseless. I don't know. There's a little dent right here. Easy enough to dolly out. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll start working on lining this up on the other fender. Okay, I should have had the camera on, but I didn't. I kind of got into it and forgot about it. But I did a little hammer and dolly work. I got this dent worked out here, and I just dollied it on the wooden block. The contour up here I think is pretty accurate. That fender is actually a little bit bent. I went ahead and spent some time fixing the lip up in here. This is still bent out a little bit, so I got to dolly that in a little bit. This line here, right here, was too soft, so I went ahead on the edge of the wooden block and dollied that back in there a little bit. So this is pretty close. This edge over here is also bent out a little bit, but the one thing I want to do is get the back of this cleaned up so that it's ready to have put on it. so that it's go. So I'm just going to take the wire brush and get after that for a second. Alright, so I got this all ready to go. I'm going to flange this next. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do here. Probably divide this into two pieces, but we'll figure that out. But I got the new piece hammered out. It's rust treated on the back, all cleaned up. I've got the edge cut out in here. If you can see that a little bit, I just notched it so that this fits up in there nicely. And then I line it up with the line. It's a little bit loose on the front end right now, but I'm purposely leaving it that way. Because I want to be able to just kind of hammer and dolly that into place. So it's good. So very happy. Just got to flange this now with my panel flanger, and I'm not going to attempt to butt weld that. That's just ridiculous down there. I think flanging it in a double layer is going to be fine. So we'll get out the handy dandy flanger and get that done. Alright, so I've got it flanged. I had to trim it up just a little bit more. I forget this flanger is different than the one I used to have, and it's not as deep. I need to get a different one, but for now this one works. It's just a cheap Harbor Freight unit, but I've got it flanged across here, so now I want to take the grinder and get all this cleaned up and get it ready. But this piece is fitting in nicely. I did cut a chunk out right here where this curve is, because I really can't flange on that anyway, and I'll just butt weld that little piece. But dimple right there. But it's fitting in here very nicely now. The line lines up good. I think it's going to look really good. I just got a little dimple right there I got to deal with so that it comes up just a little bit more. So we have the piece patch now on there. It's looking good. I got one little glitch on the back side I got to deal with. The inner splash apron that bolts down to the bottom of this inner fender piece is getting in the way. So I want to flip the fender over. You can see it down there, that rusty bolt that's kind of sticking out there is supposed to go into this hole here. So I got to get that flipped over and get that in the right place. I decided the easiest thing to do is just unbolt it and take it out of the way for now. The bottom corner of it's a bit rusty, so I'll get this patch on there. Then we'll look at the one on the other fender, which I think is worse. Otherwise, I will just weld a small patch on that corner and then bolt it back in there. John may want to clean that up before we do that also, so I'll leave that up to him. Okay, so we've got the patch kind of clamped on there now, and with that piece out of the way in the back, I can get a much better hold on it. It's still spreading a little bit in here, but once I get it tacked down here, I can use these grips from this side and get in there and tighten it down. So I believe we're ready to start melting the metal. Oh yeah. Just a quick tool tip. Just had the tip in my wire welder plug up solid and could not get it to break loose. It sticks once in a while, but this time it was, usually I take it to the grinder and grind the end of it off and it'll pop back out again, but not this time. So anyway, I didn't have any more of the threaded style tips. I put a new gun on my welder, I don't know, 5 or 8 years ago or something. And I still have a whole bunch of these old ones that aren't threaded. The new ones are threaded. So I took this in my drill and just turned the end of it down a little bit and ran a tap over it, get that where you can see it, so that it's it should thread into my gun now, and I'll be able to use up about a dozen of these old tips that I've had kicking around. I don't have any other tips, so and you know, necessity is the mother of invention. So I decided to just go ahead and make these work so I can use these up, and it probably last me for another 20 years. I would say probably I've had a tip plug up once every 5 or 6 years, even when I'm welding on a regular basis. And so it happens. But there you go. So the wire is just welded inside the tip and it's useless, but I have another tip and we're going to move forward. Alright, so I pretty much have it welded up there. A couple little spots I may go back and touch up after I grind, but no warpage. It's one of the things I love about flange welding is it gives it a lot more strength. It's so much easier than butt welding. Coming around in here. So now we just got to do some metal shaping on this and make it look pretty. Yeah, she turned out pretty good. A little bit of tiger hair over everything and it'll be golden. I went back and did a little touch-up welding. There was just a couple spots that I didn't feel were real good. Ground everything back down again. Looks nice. Went ahead and finished it off in there. So yeah, I think we're going to be golden here. No warping. Curvatures look good now that I hammered and dollied everything out. This is recessed just the little teeniest bit, so that's good. A little bit of metal edging to do there, maybe. I gotta play with that a little more, but I'm happy with this. So next step, I think, is to get the back of that fender down in the corner. There, patched up, and then it will be strip this fender down to bare metal and get it in primer. Alright, so I've got everything cleaned up, rust conditioned. I peeled this back just a little bit in here, blew the rust out, ran rust conditioner up in there, blew it up in there as far as I could. Peeled this edge back along here, did the same thing. I'm trying to leave factory edges as much as possible. So I went ahead and split this down, air chiseled it out. I think you saw that in the time lapse. Rust conditioned all that back in there. Everything else looks pretty good. So I got it all hammered back down, close to in place now. And I'm going to do a little different patch where on the other patch I had flanged this to set the metal into. What I'm going to do is reverse flange the patch here, here, and here, which means the patch is going to have the flange and it will slide, hopefully, slide down in there, and then we'll see. But so the flange will be down underneath, and then we'll be able to weld it up, and that should be pretty flush. So you'll see what I'm talking about here as I make the template. Okay, so what I've done this time is make a rubbing, which means I laid it over the opening here and just took a pencil and just rubbed it over so that I could trace the outline of the hole. So now I'm going to take this and trim it a little bit bigger all the way around to start, and then determine how deep it needs to be for the flanging to do the step down flanges in there. So I've got my piece of tin all marked out now, and we're just going to take a pair of tin snips and run around here and just trim this out. And then we'll get the flanger on there and flange it, and hopefully everything is the right size. Alright, so the stamping tool didn't give me quite enough of what I wanted, so I'm going to run it in the tipping die and hopefully be able to tip this edge over the way I want it here. and make it do what it needs to do. Got a little bit of a problem getting it started, but I think we'll get it. Yep, there we go. There we go, much better. That should be tipping nicely. Ooh, it's not tight enough, that's why. That would explain it. There. Hopefully, this is going to work. There we go. Got in there a little bit too far. Perfect. That's what we want. I'll show you here in just a second what we're getting. Yeah, come on, get through there. Okay, we're hitting the other flange, so we'll get back out. We have the same issue here, so I got to do a little trimming right here. I'll be right back. Forgot to turn the camera back on to finish it, but you can see now I got a nice flange. I got to do a little hammer and dolly work to straighten things up, but this piece here now should be able to fit right in where I want it. And if it's too thick, I can always just dolly that edge down just a little bit. But I think that's going to be a nice little inset piece. That's what I was shooting for, but I just couldn't get it with that cheap crimper. Okay, so I hammered and dollied that out a little bit. Now you can see what we've got. So I want to put some rust conditioner on the back of this. Probably going to spray this with high heat also, just because I can. And it should fit right down in there now and have a nice offset. It may have a little twist to it. No big deal, we can straighten that out. But you can see how that's going to go in there. I got a little booger I got to clean right there. But otherwise, once I hammer and dolly this down and pull it up into position, that little piece is going to fit in there beautifully. So I probably have to do a little trimming back here yet. So I'll get that done. I just want to make sure that I got my front edges everywhere exactly where I want it to be. So we'll get that done here right now. I don't know if I can do it with this, but we're going to try, because I think it's just that little bugger right there. Yep, it is. Just a little booger that was there. And I purposely have this bottom edge peeled up just a bit. So, yep, my back edge is actually pretty good. Off just a little bit, so I need to trim that back just a bit more. And I also got my other piece is catching just a little bit there, so, but it gives me a good indicator where this has to go. So again, with fabricating, it's just cut and fit and cut and fit and cut and fit. You just keep after it and get it done. And I will admit, I'm not a fabricator. I like fabricating, but in the scope of fabricating, I'm not the hottest thing around, but I have fun, and that's all that matters. So, okay, now the other thing that's in here that I have to do is it's got a little bit of rounding also, but I want to get this back edge cut first. Yeah, I'm very happy with the way that's falling into place now. So let's get this back edge cut between here. Okay, that got off quickly. There we go, that's better. This red, which is the right-handed set, I tend to like. It's my favorite. I tend to use it in ways I shouldn't. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, good. So now I got a little bit of a catch right there that's holding the front down, because right back in here, it's got a little bit of a dimple sticking up. So I just need to flatten that out, which means I need to cut it in here. Like so. Take it over to the block. I'll be right back. And voila. So one thing I had to do was go from the back side. I could not get this edge to stay up here, and I was puzzled, so I'll show you what I did. Was fortunately there was a hole right back here, and I was able to just jam a screwdriver in there, and that reached right into the tip of that and pulled that up. So as I weld this, pardon my shaky camera, I'm going to actually start right here, tack it, probably try to peen this down a little bit, but as we go then, This is up, and I know it, so it needs to come down. And we'll get this edge lined up back here, which I think it's good, and we'll be able to get this sucker welded in there nicely. So I'm very excited for the way this is turning out. I love it when a plan comes together. And I screwed up and forgot to paint the back of it with high heat, so I had to take it back out. But we'll get it right back in there very quickly. And then on this, I'm just going to put a patch on the backside to patch up that little hole. So we'll get this all hammered all the way together after it's welded, and it's going to look outstanding. And that'll be the last patch, except for welding up the trim holes on this. Sometimes things work out for the best. I got a little better positioning on it when I put it in there, clamped it in, and this edge is tight without that screwdriver. I think I'm still going to put it back in there, but I don't need it. So that's exciting. That means it's fitting better. Yeah, there it is. So that's good. All right, let's weld. Melt the metal. Just like that, we have a patch that did exactly what I hoped it would. It turned out almost flush, so the next step is to grind it down, and good to go. So that's going to be getting close to the end here. Let's get this ground up and we'll see what it looks like. Covered with a slight little coat of tiger hair, and good to go. I'm happy with that. With a TIG welder, I could do a much better job of making it flawlessly seamless, but I don't have one. And I'm not going to sit there and grind and weld too much with a MIG, because you start getting thin metal and then the metal will pop. I was concerned about that had happened right there, but I don't think so. I think that's just a gouge in the steel right here. I don't think that's a split. It doesn't make sense at that angle that it would be. But if I'm worried about it, I'll go back and just run a little teeny bead there. But overall, we've got a good solid edge now. I'll take a hand file and just true that up just a little bit. I've got to do a little dressing down here, but I don't know if I said it or not, but we just ran out of propane in the shop again, and I'm getting cold. The furnace is running, but it's just not putting out any heat. So between what we did yesterday and today in this episode, I think we did a lot. Well, we spent about 9 hours on it yesterday and probably 5 today. I'm not totally sure what time it is, but 4 or 5 hours today. So overall, we did a lot. I do have a few things yet that I need to do to this. Like I said, weld up the trim holes across the top of the fender, a couple other things like that. But for the most part, the fender's done. I have one brace I need to put back in that I had to take out. Little things, but for the most part, we're ready to strip this fender down now and get it in primer. So a little mud work and good to go. So there you go. If you want to see the rest of the process on this fender, drop some comments down below there. We would appreciate that. You know, we want to give you content that you want to see. I know a lot of you are anxious for me to get back on the 70 Challenger. I am too. Just got a lot going on right now, and I want to film what I'm doing when I'm doing it. So this weekend was going to be dedicated to getting John's fender done. So there you go, buddy. Hope you had fun watching me fix up your stuff. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Hit the bell so you receive notifications. Also, smash that like button down there on the video if you enjoyed this. Please drop comments. Let us know what you want to see. I know many of you do, and I appreciate it. I try to respond to every one of them. We're on Facebook /MyCarShop. We're on Instagram /MyCarShop. Hey, don't go away. Wait, there's lots more on the channel. Just pick something that's up here and go watch other stuff. There's 107, 108. I'm not even sure how many episodes are on here, but there's a lot. So you're not going to want to miss out. And as always, what do we say around here? Rock!